I left my toxic boyfriend after my best friend treated me better, and here why. I feel disgusting for even thinking this, but I can't pretend it's not messing with my head anymore. My roommate's boyfriend made me tea last night. That's it, tea. He walked in, saw me curled up on the couch with my hoodie over my knees, looking half dead from my econ midterm, and just casually said, "You want some tea too?" Like it was the most normal thing in the world. 10 minutes later, he handed me a mug, asked how I was holding up, and sat nearby so I wouldn't feel like a ghost haunting the living room. It broke me, like fully broke me. Because I realized my own boyfriend of 3 years has never done something like that for me. Not tea, not "how are you?" Not anything without me asking or begging or falling apart first. I didn't even want the tea. I wanted the feeling of being seen. We've been together since I was 19. It started off sweet, I won't lie. He was funny, smart, confident. The kind of guy who walks into a room and just owns it, you know. But somewhere along the line, that confidence turned into something colder. Like I'm still the one texting first, still the one planning dates, still the one adjusting my schedule around his. And if I try to bring any of that up, it becomes, "You're being dramatic," or "Can we not do this right now?" The worst part, I swallowed it. I kept swallowing it, because I thought that's just how relationships get after a while. You lose the spark. You get comfortable. You stop doing the little things. I thought maybe I was expecting too much, that I was the problem. But last night, someone else's boyfriend made me feel more cared for in 10 minutes than mine has in months. And now I can't stop thinking about it. For context, I live in campus housing in a tiny town in Wyoming. I'm a full-time student, working weekends at a local coffee shop to afford groceries and gas. My roommate, let's call her Jess, is also a student, total sweetheart, super into plants, calls her mom every Sunday. Her boyfriend, we'll call him Tyler, started coming around a few months ago. He's that guy who's good with everyone. Not fake nice, just effortlessly decent. He remembers my name, says hi when he walks in, cleans up his dishes without being asked. The first few times I saw them together, I honestly didn't think much of it. But over time, I started noticing things. Like how he always opens the door for her, or how he listens when she talks, I mean really listens. Eye contact, nods, follows up on stuff she said last week. And then I started noticing the lack of all that in my own relationship. A few days ago, I had a brutal call with my boyfriend. He was mad I couldn't come visit that weekend because of midterms. "No, good luck. No, you'll do great. Just, you always put school before me." I hung up and cried in the bathroom. I didn't even tell Jess. I didn't want to sound like a broken record. But that night, Tyler was over, and he saw me spacing out in the kitchen and just said, "Rough day?" with this tone like he actually cared about the answer. I mumbled something about exams, and he said, "You've got this. Seriously, you're one of the hardest working people I've met." No big speech, no fake pep talk, just sincerity. And I realized then that I couldn't remember the last time my own boyfriend said anything like that to me without it being forced or after I begged for reassurance. Now I feel like the worst person alive, because I'm starting to crave that feeling of being cared for, and it's not coming from the person it should be. And the worst part is, I don't even want Tyler. That's not what this is. I just want what Jess has. I want to feel like I matter without having to earn it. Is that so wrong? I can't stop thinking about last night, about how Tyler was so easy to talk to, so natural in the way he showed up for people. It's messed up, but every time he's around, I feel like a completely different person. Like I'm somehow worthy of being noticed, of being treated like I actually matter. I'm not supposed to feel this way. But here I am, staring at my phone again, willing myself not to text him, not Tyler, my boyfriend. I keep thinking about that one time when I was so upset, I literally begged him for 5 minutes of his time. I just wanted him to look me in the eyes, ask how I was, maybe even hold my hand for a minute. And he said, "I'm busy right now. Let's talk later." Later never came. And here I am, searching through my phone, looking for a way to excuse the feeling I'm having. I'm not looking for another relationship. I'm not looking for Tyler to replace my boyfriend, but the more I replay last night in my head, the more I realize that I've been settling for a long time. And did I stop demanding better from the person I love? This morning Jess came in and caught me staring blankly out of the window. She asked, "You okay?" And I lied, of course. "Yeah, just tired." But then she looked at me like she could see through the walls I've been building. She knows. She didn't say anything, but the way she smiled, it wasn't one of those "I'm too polite to ask" smiles. It was one of those knowing, "I'm here if you need me" smiles. I can't explain it, but I felt like she was seeing through me, right into the storm of self-doubt I've been drowning in for the past few months. It was like she could tell that something was missing, and I couldn't lie anymore. But the thing is, I don't want to talk about it with her. I don't want to admit how twisted my thoughts have become. I don't want to admit that I am jealous of her relationship. It's pathetic. I'm so messed up right now. I shouldn't even be feeling this way, and I can't believe I'm writing this down. But last night, after Tyler left, I found myself Googling things like, how to know if you're in a toxic relationship, or is my boyfriend emotionally distant? And I kept seeing these articles that all sounded the same. You shouldn't have to beg for love. You deserve someone who listens to you. Love isn't about making excuses for someone else's behavior. And I just kept thinking, well, that sounds nice in theory, but my boyfriend isn't abusive. He's just not good at this at all. But Tyler's words were still echoing in my head. You've got this. Seriously, you're one of the hardest working people I've met. I can't even explain it, but for the first time in forever, I felt it. Like someone was actually seeing me for who I am, not just for what I could do for them. It's silly, right? I shouldn't be letting a guy I hardly know make me question everything. But every time I walk into our shared kitchen and see my boyfriend, I can't stop thinking about how little effort he puts in. It's so easy to get caught up in your head when you feel like you're drowning, and I don't even know how to explain this to anyone. What's worse is that I don't even know what I'm looking for. I don't know if I'm craving attention, affection, or just a confirmation that I'm not as invisible as I feel. But when Tyler made me tea, that moment felt like I mattered. Now, every time my boyfriend texts me, I feel this weird, unsettling pit in my stomach. Like I'm just going through the motions, pretending that everything's fine when it really is. Last night, I barely even replied to his messages. I didn't know what to say. I didn't want to talk about midterms or plans or anything else. All I could think about was how nice it would have been if my boyfriend could have just cared, in that simple, effortless way. Instead, he sent me a text this morning asking if I wanted to go out to lunch, like it's just another regular weekend. It's hard to explain this feeling. It's not like I want to break up with him. It's not even that I want anything from Tyler. It's just that I'm starting to see the difference. And it feels like I've been lying to myself this whole time. And now I don't know what to do. I spent the entire weekend alone in my head. I know that sounds dramatic, but it's the truth. I had my books and assignments, sure, but none of that mattered. Every time I tried to focus on my studies or even text my boyfriend, all I could hear in my head was the sound of Tyler's voice, that casual sincerity. I couldn't escape it. Saturday afternoon, I went for a walk. I told myself I was just going to clear my head, maybe catch some fresh air. But as I walked down the quiet campus streets, every step felt heavier. I passed the same benches where I'd sat with my boyfriend last fall, laughing about stupid things. I passed the bookstore where we'd picked out books for each other on our first date. But all I could think about was how those moments now felt so forced, how everything felt like a performance instead of something genuine. I kept walking, not really caring where my feet were taking me. I just needed to keep moving, to avoid the thoughts swirling in my mind. The silence was deafening. The further I walked, the more I realized that I couldn't shake off the feeling that something was wrong, not with me, but with what I was allowing to happen. I ended up at a small cafe off campus, the one with the mismatched chairs and the soft, indie music playing in the background. I sat by the window and ordered a coffee I didn't even want, just to have something to hold on to. And I texted Jess. She knew something was off. She's one of those friends who always picks up on the smallest shifts in your mood, and after last night, she must have sensed that I was spiraling. I told her I'd meet her later, but I still needed some space. She understood. I spent the next few hours scrolling mindlessly through my phone, reading articles I had already read a dozen times. How to tell if your relationship is toxic. Is he emotionally unavailable? When should you give up on love? Every article was the same, but the one thing they all had in common was that I should be asking these questions. Why was I tolerating this? Why was I still trying to convince myself that things would get better? That maybe, one day, my boyfriend would just wake up and realize how much I was doing for him, how much I was giving. And then it hit me. I was waiting for someone to treat me like I mattered, waiting for things to get better, waiting for a sign that maybe this wasn't all just a cycle of disappointment. But what if I was never going to get that sign? I texted Jess and told her I was coming over. We met at a local park near her apartment, sitting on the swings, both of us wrapped up in oversized jackets, sipping from thermoses of tea. It felt like something out of a movie. We looked like we had all the time in the world to just exist in the moment. But as I talked to her, I felt the weight of everything start to crash down. Jess asked me, "Do you want my opinion?" I nodded before she even finished the question. Jess has this way of being blunt without being mean. She's one of the few people who can tell me when I'm being stupid, and I trust her for it. "You need to step back," she said. "I get that you love him, but it's clear he's not giving you the love you deserve. You've been giving so much of yourself and he's not even meeting you halfway. How long are you going to wait for something that might never come?" I couldn't speak for a few moments. I stared at the grass beneath me, trying to come up with some excuse for why I should keep pushing forward. But there was no excuse, not anymore. "I don't want to be the girl who quits," I said quietly, more to myself than to her. "You're not quitting, you're realizing your worth," Jess replied, her voice firm. You deserve someone who will see you every single day, not just when it's convenient for them. Her words hit me harder than I expected. I didn't want to admit it, but I knew deep down that she was right. I had spent the last few months, hell, probably even longer, telling myself that the effort I was putting in was enough. But it was. It was never going to be enough if it wasn't coming from both sides. I texted Jess and told her I was coming over. We met at a local park near her apartment, sitting on the swings, both of us wrapped up in oversized jackets, sipping from thermoses of tea. It felt like something out of a movie. We looked like we had all the time in the world to just exist in the moment. But as I talked to her, I felt the weight of everything start to crash down. Jess asked me, "Do you want my opinion?" I nodded before she even finished the question. Jess has this way of being blunt without being mean. She's one of the few people who can tell me when I'm being stupid, and I trust her for it. "You need to step back," she said. "I get that you love him, but it's clear he's not giving you the love you deserve. You've been giving so much of yourself and he's not even meeting you halfway. How long are you going to wait for something that might never come?" I couldn't speak for a few moments. I stared at the grass beneath me, trying to come up with some excuse for why I should keep pushing forward. But there was no excuse, not anymore. "I don't want to be the girl who quits," I said quietly, more to myself than to her. "You're not quitting, you're realizing your worth," Jess replied, her voice firm. "You deserve someone who will see you every single day, not just when it's convenient for them." Her words hit me harder than I expected. I didn't want to admit it, but I knew deep down that she was right. I had spent the last few months, hell, probably even longer, telling myself that the effort I was putting in was enough. But it was. It was never going to be enough if it wasn't coming from both sides. I had barely sent the message when my phone buzzed. It was a text from him, my boyfriend. I held my breath, my finger hovering over the screen, unsure of how to proceed. But when I finally read the words, I regretted it almost instantly. "What the hell is this? We need space. Really? After everything I've done for you, you're going to throw it all away like this?" I felt my stomach drop. I wanted to backtrack. I wanted to apologize, to say it was a mistake, but I knew I couldn't. This was it. This was the line I had to draw. Still, I kept staring at the screen, reading the same message over and over. How did I always end up here? Why was he always the one to make me feel guilty? The next few minutes were a blur of back and forth texts. He was furious. The tone was aggressive, blaming me for everything. I was the problem. I was the one who didn't appreciate him. "You know how much I sacrifice for us, how much I do for you, for us. And this is how you repay me. I've been there for you through everything, and now you're doing this." I could feel the anger creeping into my chest. I wasn't surprised. He had done this before, made me feel like I was ungrateful, like everything he did was some huge favor that I should have been endlessly grateful for. But not this time. This time I was standing my ground. I couldn't be swayed by his guilt trip anymore. "I'm not doing this because I don't appreciate you," I texted back. "I just need some time. I need to figure out what's best for me." There was no reply for what felt like an eternity, and then he came back with something even worse. "You're being ridiculous. You're going to regret this. I've been there for you through thick and thin, and this is how you repay me. You want space? Fine, but don't think you can just walk away from me. You'll come crawling back." It was like a switch flipped in me. His words, so cold, so manipulative, had never hit me harder. Every time I thought about standing up for myself, he came at me with this wave of guilt and anger. He made me feel like I was crazy, like I didn't know what I was talking about. But now, something had changed inside me. I was tired, so tired of letting him make me feel small. I wasn't going to back down. I put my phone down and I took a deep breath. I knew what I had to do. I needed to stop living my life for him. A few minutes later, my phone buzzed again. This time, the text was different. "I'm coming over to talk to you. I'm not letting you get away with this. We're going to have a real conversation about this, and you're going to hear me out. You'll regret it if I have to come there." My heart raced. My palms grew clammy. I could feel the fear creeping in, like I was back in that place where I'd just been holding on, waiting for everything to get better. I wanted to back out. I wanted to say, "No, you don't need to come here." But the message had already been sent, and I knew deep down I couldn't avoid this conversation forever. But then, just as I was preparing myself for the storm that was about to hit, a knock came at my door. It wasn't him. I opened the door to find Tyler standing there. He looked serious, but there was no anger in his eyes, no judgment, just concern. "What's going on?" he asked, his voice low, like he knew something was wrong. I didn't want to drag him into this. I didn't want him to get involved. But there was no hiding it anymore. I felt like I was drowning, and here was someone who actually cared enough to ask. I told him everything. About the texts, about the way he always made me feel like I wasn't enough, about how every time I tried to stand up for myself, I'd just end up back where I started, feeling guilty. Tyler didn't interrupt. He just listened, his brow furrowing with each word. When I finished, there was a long silence, and then he said, "You don't deserve to be treated like that." I wanted to cry. No one had ever said that to me, not in a way that made me feel it. But then, just as I was about to say something, I heard it, the sound of a car pulling up outside. My heart skipped a beat. It was him. A few minutes later, my phone buzzed again. This time, the text was different. "I'm coming over to talk to you. I'm not letting you get away with this. We're going to have a real conversation about this, and you're going to hear me out. You'll regret it if I have to come there." My heart raced. My palms grew clammy. I could feel the fear creeping in, like I was back in that place where I'd just been holding on, waiting for everything to get better. I wanted to back out. I wanted to say, "No, you don't need to come here." But the message had already been sent, and I knew deep down I couldn't avoid this conversation forever. But then, just as I was preparing myself for the storm that was about to hit, a knock came at my door. It wasn't him. I opened the door to find Tyler standing there. He looked serious, but there was no anger in his eyes, no judgment, just concern. "What's going on?" he asked, his voice low, like he knew something was wrong. I didn't want to drag him into this. I didn't want him to get involved. But there was no hiding it anymore. I felt like I was drowning, and here was someone who actually cared enough to ask. I told him everything. About the texts, about the way he always made me feel like I wasn't enough, about how every time I tried to stand up for myself, I'd just end up back where I started, feeling guilty. Tyler didn't interrupt. He just listened, his brow furrowing with each word. When I finished, there was a long silence, and then he said, "You don't deserve to be treated like that." I wanted to cry. No one had ever said that to me, not in a way that made me feel it. But then, just as I was about to say something, I heard it, the sound of a car pulling up outside. My heart skipped a beat. It was him. I barely had time to process the fact that my boyfriend was about to walk through that door when Tyler's hand gently rested on my shoulder. "Don't worry," he said softly. "I've got this." Before I could even protest, Tyler opened the door just as my boyfriend stepped up to it, his face flushed with anger. I could practically feel the tension in the air as my boyfriend stood there, looking between me and Tyler. "What's this? Who the hell are you?" My boyfriend growled, his fists clenched at his sides. Tyler didn't flinch. He didn't even raise his voice. "I'm just someone who's not going to let you walk all over her anymore," he said, his voice steady but firm. There was a long pause. My boyfriend stared at Tyler, clearly trying to figure out if he should throw a punch or try to make some excuse for why he was acting like this. But Tyler didn't give him the chance. "She doesn't owe you anything. You don't get to treat her like crap and think that she's just supposed to take it." It felt like the world had stopped for a moment. I stood there, frozen, watching as Tyler faced my boyfriend with this quiet strength, this sense of protectiveness that I hadn't realized I needed until now. For the first time in a long time, I didn't feel like I had to choose between love and respect. Tyler wasn't just defending me, he was reminding me that I deserved better. The room was tense, the air thick with the weight of everything unspoken. My boyfriend stood there, fists clenched, his face a mask of rage. But Tyler, calm and unshaken, kept his gaze steady. I could see it in his eyes. He wasn't just standing up for me, he was doing what I couldn't do for myself. He was being the person I should have been all along. "Get out of my way," my boyfriend spat, his voice laced with venom. Tyler didn't flinch. He didn't even blink. "Not going to happen," Tyler said simply. "You're not welcome here anymore." The words hit my boyfriend like a slap in the face. His face reddened and his jaw tightened. I could see the wheels turning in his head, the panic setting in. He was losing control. He didn't like that. For a moment, it felt like time had frozen. My boyfriend took a step toward Tyler, but before he could say anything else, I stepped forward, my voice cutting through the thick silence. "Don't you dare touch him," I said, my voice trembling but firm. "I'm done with this, with you." The words tasted bitter on my tongue, but they felt like freedom, like the first breath of fresh air after suffocating in a room full of smoke. I could see my boyfriend's face twist in disbelief. "You're really doing this? You're really going to throw everything away for some guy who just swoops in like a knight in shining armor?" he sneered. Tyler didn't answer. He didn't need to. He was already there, his presence more than enough. My boyfriend turned to leave, but not before one last glance that I would never forget. "This isn't over," he said, his voice low, filled with resentment. "You'll regret this, you always do." And with that, he was gone. The door clicked shut behind him, and I exhaled a breath I didn't even realize I'd been holding. The tension in my body started to ease, but the weight of everything I'd just done started to sink in. I began, but Tyler was already standing beside me, his hand on my shoulder. "You okay?" he asked, his voice softer than I expected. I nodded, but I felt a wave of guilt crash over me. Did I really just do that? Was I a terrible person for cutting him off? Tyler must have sensed it, because he looked at me and said, "You're allowed to choose yourself. You deserve more than what he was giving you." I swallowed hard, trying to hold back the tears that were suddenly threatening to spill. I wasn't sure if they were from relief or fear, or maybe from the realization of how much I'd been putting up with for far too long. Tyler stayed with me for a while, just talking, just being there. It wasn't anything grand. It wasn't some big savior moment, but it was the first time in a long while I felt like someone cared about me, really cared about me, not for what I could give them, but just for me. And that was something I hadn't felt in years. The next few weeks were a blur of mixed emotions. My ex tried to contact me multiple times, each message more manipulative than the last. I deleted them without reading. I didn't need to hear his apologies or excuses anymore. I didn't owe him anything. Tyler and I hung out more. He was patient, never pushing me, but I could feel myself opening up more and more. We talked about everything and nothing, and slowly I started to realize that I wasn't just getting out of a toxic relationship. I was learning to live again. It wasn't just about getting over my ex. It was about reclaiming who I was. The girl who had been so afraid of making the wrong choice, so afraid of being alone, that she had lost herself in someone else's drama. I realized that I didn't need anyone to validate me. I wasn't just someone's girlfriend anymore. I was me. A few months passed, and things began to feel lighter. I still had bad days, days where the guilt crept in and whispered, maybe you could have handled it better. But those days became fewer and fewer. I was growing stronger, and I was starting to believe that maybe, just maybe, I deserved to be happy. Tyler and I remained friends, close friends. And as I walked through campus that day, looking out at the people around me, I realized I was no longer afraid of what was coming next. I had no idea what the future held, but I knew that whatever it was, I could face it. I was ready for whatever came next. I never heard from my ex again. Maybe he found someone else to manipulate. Maybe he moved on. Maybe he never even thought twice. I didn't care anymore. Tyler, he remained in my life, and I could feel the bond between us growing stronger, but I wasn't rushing into anything. Not yet. I had learned that real growth came from within, not from depending on someone else to fix everything for me. And me, I was learning to take care of myself, to trust my instincts, to let go of what wasn't serving me anymore. I wasn't perfect, but I was finally whole.